Captain Eric Nolan leaned back in his chair on the bridge of the Odyssey, eyes scanning the star-studded blackness outside. The calm was abruptly shattered by a series of sharp beeps from the navigation console. "Captain, we're picking up a distress signal," reported Lieutenant Harper, her fingers dancing over the holographic controls. "It's weak, but definitely there." Nolan straightened up, interest piqued. "Source?" "Pinpointing now. It's coming from a spacecraft within the asteroid field not far from our current trajectory," Harper replied, adjusting the display to show the field's dense cluster of floating rocks. "Can we get any ID on the vessel?" Nolan asked, his voice laced with curiosity. Harper shook her head. "It's unregistered, or the ID's being scrambled by the asteroids. Hard to tell." Nolan considered their options briefly. "Set a course, Harper. Let's take a closer look, and keep an eye out for any debris." As the Odyssey maneuvered towards the source of the signal, Nolan called his chief security officer, Sergeant Mills, to the bridge. "Mills, prep your team for a possible boarding. We don't know what we're walking into." Mills nodded, her expression serious. "Understood, Captain. We'll be ready." Minutes later, the Odyssey edged closer to the distressed ship, the silhouette of the damaged vessel becoming visible against the backdrop of a large asteroid. The ship looked battered, its hull scarred with what appeared to be blast marks. "Visuals up, Harper. Let's see what we're dealing with," Nolan instructed. The main screen flickered to life, showing the alien craft in more detail. It was sleek, yet clearly designed for speed and agility, now marred by battle damage and derelict in space. "Life signs?" Nolan asked, his gaze fixed on the screen. "Just one, Captain," Harper replied, checking her readings. "But it's faint. Whoever they are, they might be injured." "Okay, that settles it. We're going in," Nolan decided, standing up. "Mills, you're with me. Harper, you have the con." The rescue team suited up quickly and boarded the shuttle. The short trip through the asteroid field was tense, with Mills maneuvering deftly between the spinning rocks. They docked with the alien craft, the magnetic seals engaging with a solid thump. Nolan led the way through the airlock, laser rifle at the ready. The inside of the ship was dark and eerily silent, except for the occasional creak of the stressed hull. They moved cautiously, their lights cutting through the gloom. As they approached the cockpit, they found a figure slumped over the controls. Nolan stepped forward, lowering his weapon. "Hello? We're here to help. Can you understand me?" The figure stirred, raising her head slowly. It was a young woman, her features distinctly non-human, with faintly glowing skin and large, luminous eyes. She was unmistakably royal, her garments, though tattered, of fine quality. "Please, help me," she whispered in heavily accented English, her voice weak but urgent. "We've got you," Nolan reassured her, signaling Mills to advance with a medical kit. "What happened here?" "They attacked my world, my family," she murmured, pain evident in her voice. "I am Princess Alara, last of the Terralians." Nolan exchanged a glance with Mills. A princess, alone and hunted. This rescue just became a diplomatic incident. But first, they needed to get her to safety. "Let's get her back to the Odyssey," Nolan said decisively. "We'll figure out our next move once she's secure, and we know more about who's after her." As they helped Alara to her feet, Nolan felt the weight of the situation settle on him. Whoever wanted her gone had resources, and now, by rescuing her, his ship was in the crosshairs. But leaving her wasn't an option, not while he was in command. Back aboard the Odyssey, Captain Nolan led Princess Alara through the sterile corridors to the medical bay, his mind racing with the implications of her presence on his ship. "Sit tight, Princess. Our medic will take a look at you shortly," Nolan said as they entered the well-equipped medical suite. Alara nodded, her eyes scanning the unfamiliar technology with a mix of apprehension and curiosity. "Thank you, Captain Nolan. Your assistance is most unexpected, given the circumstances of my people." As the ship's doctor, Dr. Sato, began examining Alara, Nolan stepped out into the hallway where Sergeant Mills was waiting. "What's the situation, Mills?" Nolan asked, keeping his voice low. Mills looked uneasy. "Sir, the crew's buzzing about the princess. Word's gotten out that she's royalty, and a target. There's concern about who might come looking for her." Nolan rubbed his temples. "Understood. Keep everyone on high alert and limit access to our guest. Only essential personnel in and out." Returning to the medical bay, Nolan found Alara sitting up, speaking quietly with Dr. Sato. He waited for a pause before interjecting. "Princess, if you feel up to it, I'd like to discuss your situation more formally in my office. We need to understand what we're dealing with." Alara agreed, and soon they were seated in Nolan's sparse office. The captain offered her a drink, which she declined, her demeanor solemn. "Captain, to say that my world is in turmoil would be an understatement," Alara began, her voice steady despite the clear strain. "Rebels have overtaken the royal palace, my family. I fear they are lost. I escaped purely by fortune, thanks to a loyal few." Nolan listened intently, aware of the gravity of her words. "Do you have a destination in mind? Somewhere you think you'll be safe?" "I was hoping to seek asylum on Zillar, a neutral planet in the Harlan sector. They are known for their fairness and discretion." Nolan considered this, tapping a digital map projected onto his desk. "Zillar is a few days' travel from here. We can make course adjustments, but we should expect that the rebels might pursue us." Alara's expression hardened with resolve. "I understand the risks, Captain. I can only hope my presence doesn't bring conflict to your crew." Nolan gave a reassuring nod. "We knew the job was dangerous when we signed up. Right now, my priority is getting you to safety. We'll deal with any problems as they come." After Alara had left to rest, Nolan called a meeting with his senior officers. "We have a high-value passenger on board, and she's brought some serious baggage. I need everyone sharp and ready for what might come our way. Harper, plot a course for Zillar. Mills, double up on security details, especially near the guest quarters and the bridge." As the officers dispersed to carry out his orders, Nolan stayed back, staring at the star map. He was used to dealing with smugglers and space pirates, not political refugees and interstellar rebels. Yet, here he was, charting a course not only through space, but through a political minefield he had never intended to navigate. The Odyssey hummed through the darkness of space, its engines glowing faintly as it navigated towards the Harlan sector. Captain Nolan, ever vigilant, monitored the ship's progress from the bridge, closely observing the data streaming across the multiple displays. "Harper, status report?" Nolan called out, his gaze fixed on the forward screen displaying the star map. Lieutenant Harper adjusted her console and replied, "Course to Zillar is locked in, Captain. We should arrive in approximately 3 days. However, there's something else. I've detected unusual sensor pings at R6. Could be nothing, but it's persistent." Nolan's eyes narrowed. "Define unusual." "It's sporadic, but patterned, like a distant ship might make if it were trying to remain unnoticed," Harper explained, her voice tinged with concern. "Could be our rebel friends, or worse," Nolan muttered, turning to his communications officer. "Johnson, any luck with those encrypted signals?" Johnson shook his head. "Still working through the encryption, sir. If someone is tailing us, they're keeping their communications tight." Nolan strode across the bridge to Harper's station. "Keep an eye on those pings. If they get any closer, I want to know immediately." The captain's predictions proved accurate sooner than expected. Within hours, the sensor pings had not only multiplied, but were rapidly closing in on their position. "Captain, we've got multiple contacts now, all coming in fast," Harper reported, tension evident in her voice. "Visuals now," Nolan commanded, stepping closer to the main viewport. The screen flickered and then displayed the chilling sight of several sleek, dark vessels, their designs unmistakably Terralian. They were fast approaching, cutting through space with deliberate aggression. "Looks like they want to make sure the princess doesn't get away," Nolan noted grimly. "Battle stations, everyone. Prepare for possible combat." As the crew scrambled to their positions, Nolan opened a channel to Princess Alara's quarters. "Princess, it seems your pursuers have found us. I need you to stay in your room and keep the door sealed until I say otherwise." Alara's voice came through, calm yet firm. "Understood, Captain. I trust your judgment." Turning to Mills, Nolan issued his orders. "Get your team ready. If they board, I want non-lethal resistance. We need to hold them off without escalating violence if possible." The Odyssey shuddered as the first volleys of plasma fire struck their shields. "Shields at 75% and holding, but we won't withstand a prolonged assault," Harper reported, her eyes locked on her readouts. Nolan gritted his teeth. "Let's not give them a prolonged target. Harper, initiate evasive maneuvers pattern Delta. Johnson, any progress on that communication?" "Breaking through now, Captain," Johnson replied, fingers flying over his console. "Sending you the feed." The bridge speakers crackled to life, broadcasting a harsh, commanding voice. "Odyssey, this is Commander Ryak of the Terralian Rebel Force. Hand over the traitor Alara and cease your intervention, or we will destroy your ship." Nolan responded without hesitation. "Commander Ryak, this is Captain Eric Nolan of the Odyssey. We are a civilian vessel and claim protection under the Galactic Concord. We have no interest in your war, but we will defend ourselves if forced. As he cut the communication, Nolan signaled Harper. Take us into the asteroid field. It'll give us some cover and level the playing field. The Odyssey plunged into the dense field, asteroids providing a treacherous terrain that both hindered and helped. Nolan knew this was a gamble, but it was better than an open fight they could not hope to win. Hold on, everyone, Nolan said, watching the pursuing ships struggle to navigate the dense asteroid field. Let's see how they like playing in our court. The Odyssey's hull groaned as it narrowly avoided another massive asteroid, the erratic path providing a temporary respite from the Turalian rebels' pursuit. Captain Nolan kept his eyes glued to the main screen, watching as the enemy ships struggled to maintain their chase amidst the tumbling rocks. Looks like they're not as nimble in these conditions, Lieutenant Harper noted with a hint of satisfaction. Nolan nodded, his mind racing through their options. It's buying us time, but we can't shake them off forever in this field. We need a more permanent solution. He tapped the communication panel. Johnson, patch me through to the Zanthar homeworld. It's time we made a call we hoped to avoid. Within minutes, a new face appeared on the screen, a Zanthar official with sharp features and piercing eyes. Captain Nolan, this is an unexpected pleasure. To what do we owe the honor? We're in a bit of a bind, Nolan admitted, getting straight to the point. We have Princess Alara of Turalia aboard, and she's being pursued by rebel forces. We seek temporary asylum on your planet. The Zanthar official's eyes narrowed, the implications clear. And why should we involve ourselves in Turalian affairs? What's in it for Zanthar? Nolan was prepared for this. In exchange for your protection, the princess is willing to share Turalian technology with your people. Technology that could benefit Zanthar greatly. The official paused, considering the offer. After a moment, he replied, Very well, Captain. Proceed to these coordinates. We will discuss the terms of this alliance in person. As the communication ended, Nolan turned to Harper. Set a course for Zanthar. Let's hope this gamble pays off. The journey to Zanthar was tense, with Harper skillfully navigating out of the asteroid field and setting a direct course for the alien planet. As they approached, the towering cities and advanced infrastructure of Zanthar came into view, a stark contrast to the desolation they had just escaped. Upon landing, Nolan and Princess Alara were quickly ushered into a high-security meeting with Zanthar leaders. The room was stark and cold, filled with officials who viewed the human and Turalian with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Princess Alara took the lead, her voice steady despite the clear fatigue from the ordeal. Honored leaders of Zanthar, I am Princess Alara of Turalia. I seek your protection from forces that wish to end my life. In exchange, I offer knowledge and technology that will advance your civilization. The Zanthar officials whispered among themselves before one stepped forward, a female with a commanding presence. We are prepared to offer you sanctuary, Princess Alara. However, the technology must be transferred immediately, and you will remain under our protection until we deem the situation resolved. Nolan watched carefully, aware of the delicate balance of power at play. We agree to your terms, he said, knowing full well the strategic necessity of their cooperation. As they left the meeting, Nolan felt the weight of their precarious position. Aligning with Zanthar was risky but necessary. As they walked back to their quarters under the watchful eyes of Zanthar guards, Nolan whispered to Alara, Stay sharp, Princess. We're not out of the woods yet. This alliance is as fragile as it is necessary. Alara nodded, her expression grave. I understand, Captain. Thank you for standing by me. With the Odyssey parked on the Zanthar landing pad and the crew on high alert, Nolan prepared for any scenario. The next few days would be crucial in determining the fate of their unexpected alliance. As days turned into nights on the planet Zanthar, the uneasy alliance between Captain Nolan, Princess Alara, and their alien hosts deepened amidst a backdrop of political maneuvering and covert surveillance. The Odyssey's crew, now confined to a designated compound near the city center, worked tirelessly to uphold their part of the agreement with the Zanthars. In a secure room transformed into a makeshift lab, Princess Alara and the Zanthar scientists pored over data tablets and holographic displays, transferring and discussing Turalian technology. Nolan watched closely, ensuring that the technology shared did not compromise Turalian security or give the Zanthars undue advantage. Make sure all the protocols are followed, Alara. We can't afford any slip-ups, Nolan cautioned, his voice low as he observed a group of Zanthar officials who were scrutinizing every detail. Alara nodded, understanding the stakes. I am aware, Captain. We give them enough to satisfy their curiosity, but not enough to use against us or anyone else. Despite the cooperation in the lab, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Xanthar's military presence around their quarters was a constant reminder of their fragile position. Each day brought challenging negotiations with Zanthar leaders, who pressed for more insights and demonstrations of advanced Turalian technology. One evening, as Nolan reviewed security protocols with Sergeant Mills, Lieutenant Harper rushed in, her expression tense. "Captain, I've intercepted some troubling communications. It seems there are factions within Zanthar that aren't satisfied with the current arrangement. They're pushing for complete access to all Turalian data." Nolan's jaw tightened. "Keep monitoring those communications, Harper. We need to know who's behind this and how serious they are." The following day brought no relief. During a scheduled meeting with Xanthar's High Council, the atmosphere was charged, the council members more demanding. "We have offered you refuge at great risk to ourselves," stated one of the senior counselors, his eyes cold and calculating. "It is only fair that you reciprocate in full. We require unrestricted access to Turalian defense systems." Nolan stepped forward, his stance firm. "With all due respect, Counselor, our agreement was for civilian technological cooperation, not military. We must adhere to the terms to maintain trust on both sides." The counselor's response was icy. "Perhaps you misunderstand your position, Captain. We are not requesting. We are requiring." The meeting ended on a tense note, with Nolan and Alara returning to their quarters under the watchful gaze of Zanthar guards. Once safe inside, Nolan called a discreet meeting with his senior officers. "We need to prepare for the worst," he declared, his voice grave. "If the Xanthars decide to take what they want by force, we'll need to evacuate quickly. Mills, coordinate with the Odyssey's crew. Make sure every system is on standby. Harper, keep an eye on all outgoing communications. We can't let them blindside us." As they strategized late into the night, Nolan couldn't shake the feeling of impending danger. Their position on Zanthar was becoming increasingly precarious, and each day brought them closer to a potential confrontation that could jeopardize not just their mission, but their lives. The tension on Zanthar escalated quickly after the contentious meeting. Captain Nolan grew increasingly concerned about their ability to leave the planet peacefully. He noticed more frequent patrols and a subtle but definite increase in surveillance. The Xanthar's intentions were becoming less about alliance and more about control. While the crew of the Odyssey stayed mostly confined to their quarters under the guise of security, Nolan took to routinely checking in with his team to keep morale high and ensure everyone was prepared for any sudden changes. Late one evening, as Nolan reviewed the latest security feeds with Sergeant Mills, Lieutenant Harper interrupted them with urgent news. "Captain, I've intercepted a transmission. It's coded. But from what I've decoded, it seems a group within the Zanthar government is planning to hand Princess Alara over to the Turalian rebels." Nolan's face hardened, his worst fears inching closer to reality. "How soon?" "Within the next 24 hours, from what I gather. They're planning a handover at a remote airfield not far from here," Harper replied, the gravity of the situation evident in her voice. "We can't let that happen," Nolan stated firmly. "Mills, assemble a strike team. We're going to make sure the princess is moved to a secure location, our terms, not theirs." As Mills and Harper left to prepare, Nolan went to inform Princess Alara of the latest development. He found her in her room, surrounded by data pads and notes for her ongoing technology transfer sessions. "Princess, there's been a change. We need to move you to a new location immediately. It's no longer safe here," Nolan explained, without revealing too much detail about the intercepted message. Alara looked up, her expression resolute. "I trust your judgment, Captain. Lead the way." Under the cover of darkness, Nolan, Alara, and a small team equipped with stealth gear made their way through the service corridors of their compound, avoiding main passageways where Zanthar guards were most prevalent. They reached a service exit that led to a series of maintenance tunnels. Nolan knew these tunnels could take them to a secondary hangar where the Odyssey's shuttle was kept. Just as they were about to enter the final stretch leading to the hangar, they were ambushed. Zanthar forces, led by the same counselor who had demanded military secrets, appeared seemingly out of nowhere. "Going somewhere, Captain?" the counselor sneered, his weapon trained on Nolan. "It seems we have a misunderstanding. We were just ensuring the princess's safety, as per our agreement," Nolan countered calmly, assessing their escape options. The counselor chuckled darkly. "The only safety concern here is what happens if you continue to interfere with our plans. Hand her over, and we might let you and your crew leave Zanthar alive." Nolan glanced at Alara, giving her a slight nod. In a swift motion, Alara triggered a small device she had been concealing, emitting a blinding flash that disoriented the Zanthar soldiers. "Run!" Nolan shouted, grabbing Alara's arm as they sprinted towards the hangar. Mills and her team provided cover, exchanging fire with the Zanthar forces. They reached the shuttle, and Harper, who had been prepped by Nolan earlier, fired up the engines. "Everyone aboard now!" she yelled over the roar of the engines. As they lifted off, Nolan took one last look at the Zanthar compound, knowing they were burning bridges, but also saving lives. Now airborne, their immediate objective was clear. Get Alara to safety and regroup to plan their next move, away from the increasingly hostile grip of the Zanthar. The Odyssey's shuttle vibrated with the intensity of the ascent as it shot through Xanthar's atmosphere, pursued by the relentless fire from Zanthar military crafts. Captain Nolan gripped the console tightly, his eyes darting between the radar and the rear view where enemy ships dotted their tail. "Harper, I need more speed," Nolan barked, his voice tense over the sound of alarms. "I'm pushing the engines as hard as I can, Captain," Harper replied, her hands flying over the controls in a desperate bid to coax more power from the shuttle. Behind them, the sleek Zanthar fighters gained. Their technology was advanced, their pilots ruthless. The situation looked grim. Sergeant Mills, checking her weapon, shouted over the chaos. "We've got a couple of fighter drones left. Should I deploy them for cover?" "Do it," Nolan commanded without hesitation. With precise movements, Mills launched the small, automated drones, which flew back towards the chasing fighters. Moments later, the sky lit up as the drones collided with two of the Zanthar ships, creating a fiery barrier that bought them precious seconds. "We need a plan, and we need it now," Nolan yelled, turning to Princess Alara, who remained surprisingly composed under the circumstances. Alara leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the star map displayed on the screen. "There's a nebula not far from here, Captain. If we can reach it, we might be able to lose them in the gas clouds." Nolan nodded sharply at Harper. "Set course for the nebula. Let's hope this works." As they approached the nebula, the colorful clouds of gas enveloped the shuttle, reducing visibility to near zero. Harper reduced their speed, navigating more by instinct than by sight. Inside the nebula, the Xanthar's pursuit slowed. The volatile gases interfered with their sensors, giving the Odyssey's shuttle a ghostly cover. "Looks like we're clear for now," Harper sighed, relief evident in her voice as the enemy blips on the radar faded. Nolan turned to Alara. "Your quick thinking saved us. Thank you." Alara nodded, a faint smile on her lips. "We're not out of danger yet, Captain. We need to find a safe place to regroup and plan our next move." "I agree," Nolan responded. "We'll head to the outer rim. There are places there where we can lay low and figure out our next steps." The shuttle continued through the nebula, its occupants warily watching the sensors. Finally, they emerged on the other side, the vast openness of space around them empty and welcoming. "Set a course for the Tanez sector, Harper. It's remote and should be off the Xanthar's radar," Nolan instructed, his mind already racing through possible allies and resources they could tap into. As the shuttle made its way to the outer rim, Nolan considered their situation. They had narrowly escaped a formidable enemy and now faced the uncertainty of the future. But with Princess Alara by his side and his loyal crew at the ready, he felt a surge of resolve. They would face whatever came next, together. The shuttle from the Odyssey glided through the expanse of space, its destination the remote Tanez sector, a region known for its sparse population and infrequent patrol routes. Captain Nolan sat in quiet contemplation, reviewing their narrow escape and the trials yet to come. Princess Alara, now a constant figure by his side, observed the starlit void with a sense of wonder and worry. As they entered the sector, the stark beauty of a distant nebula cast a soothing glow inside the cockpit. Lieutenant Harper broke the silence. "We're approaching a suitable planet for landing, Captain. Scans suggest it's mostly uninhabited, but there are signs of old mining operations. It should offer the seclusion we need." "Good work, Harper. Take us in," Nolan replied, his tone resolute yet weary from the events that had unfolded. The landing was smooth, the planet's surface a patchwork of rugged terrains and verdant valleys. As they disembarked, the fresh, alien air was a stark contrast to the recycled atmosphere they'd grown accustomed to aboard the Odyssey. "Feels good to be on solid ground again, doesn't it?" Sergeant Mills remarked, scanning the horizon with practiced eyes. "It does," Alara agreed, her gaze lingering on the alien landscape. "It seems we've found a moment of peace at last." Nolan set up a temporary camp using supplies from the shuttle, establishing a perimeter with security drones. Once secure, he convened a meeting to discuss their next steps. "Here's the situation," Nolan began, addressing his small crew and the princess. "We can't stay on the run forever. We need to establish a base here, reach out to allies, and maybe even start building something permanent." Alara nodded. "I have contacts who may be willing to help us, people who are loyal to my family and who have no love for the rebels. With your permission, I'd like to send a message." "Go ahead, Princess. Any ally in this fight is welcome," Nolan responded, his expression softening. As days turned into weeks, the once temporary camp transformed into a robust outpost. Messages sent through encrypted channels brought small groups of loyalists and other refugees to their new sanctuary, each arrival expanding their capabilities and resources. One evening, as the twin suns set casting a golden light over the outpost, Nolan and Alara stood overlooking their growing community. Alara turned to Nolan, gratitude evident in her eyes. "You have done more than I ever expected, Captain. You saved me and gave us all a new beginning. How can I ever repay you?" Nolan smiled, his eyes reflecting the sunset. "Seeing this, knowing that we've made a difference, that's payment enough. But we're not done yet. We've started something here, something that can change the galaxy for the better." The outpost thrived, becoming a beacon for those seeking refuge from tyranny. Though challenges remained, with the Turalian rebels still a threat and the Zanthar watching from afar, the small community under Nolan's leadership faced each day with renewed vigor and hope. Under the stars of a new world, Nolan and Alara continued to plan, build, and dream. A new chapter for the Turalians had begun, marked not by the shadow of conflict, but by the light of new possibilities. As they looked out over the community that evening, it was clear they had not just found a new home, but had laid the foundations for a new future.